Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Elliot Hedman, and for the last 12 years, I've been working with companies like these, figuring out what is the future of ed tech, and specifically, how do we engage cognitively and emotionally our students. The way I do that is I go into after-school clubs and I work with the youth. I've worked with hundreds of kids. I have them wear these incredibly stylish eye-tracking glasses. I talk to them for a long period of time. I observe how they use their products. And I actually have them wear a sensor that I invented at the MIT Media Lab that can actually show you their subconscious emotional reactions. I can see when they're getting excited, when they're engaging, and I can see when they're getting bored. I designed for all students, and an emphasis on all. Where I work right now, 87% of the students are BIPOC, 65% are multi-language learners, 70% free and reduced lunch, 13% special needs. Where my heart is really at, 25% are proficient in reading and only 5% are proficient in math. When we fail to design for students, this happens. This is a girl in an after-school reading class. I told you this is going to be participatory. I want you to turn to each other. We're going to do this game twice. Can you find the book? Talk to each other and see if you can find where the book is. All right. It sounds like you guys found where the book was, but for a large portion of children, this is education. That book is not effective at teaching her how to read. I did a project looking at how is ed tech being used in the computer labs, and I found that a lot of the kids, they just alt-tab off of the education program and start watching YouTube for the entire hour. This is the reality of the products we're making. Okay, there's going to be some nerdy graphs. This is an emotional experience of a third grade English language learner as he's reading The Voyages of Dr. Dolittle. Those little spikes up at the top, that's him emotionally getting engaged. 7 minutes in, he and Dr. Dolittle are not the best of friends. In fact, when I came back in, there was a big pile of drool on the front page. So not only are these tools not being effective for the students I'm serving, but these students are hearing, you lack motivation, you lack discipline, you are too stupid to be able to learn, you can't handle the material, you don't belong here. So we have ineffective tools, and these tools are pushing kids away from education. They're making them feel like they don't belong here. Okay, so now I'm gonna get a little vulnerable here. I was asked to be a teacher in the last project I did. I have no teaching background. And I taught a class in the after school, fourth graders. They were all behind in reading, and I gave them an assignment. And only 17% of the students did anything on the worksheet. I mean, one kid wrote boogers, but there's just no actual participation when I used my client's tool to try to teach a classroom. Now, if any of you are teachers in the room, you probably know a great teacher can make a poorly designed educational tool work. They could have made that class work with 100% of the students doing the class. But what I would argue is we should not put all the workload on these miracle teachers. I should be able to teach the class with your tools as much as an incredibly good teacher. We all should be able to teach the tools, the students, without having to put an incredible amount of work in to make our tools work. So here's my central thesis. We need to include our students in design. And there are 3 ways to do this. Number 1, design with representative students. Number 2, listen deeply to students. And number 3, fail 10 times more often. So let's talk first about designing with representative students. Before I was in education, Estee Lauder hired me to design makeup. Now, you would not want to give me the design job of making this makeup brush better by myself. In fact, I don't know what this makeup brush does. I have no idea why it goes white and black. And if you were to tell me, Elliot, what's the future of this makeup brush? You wouldn't want to ask that question. We all can kind of almost laugh. But now I'm going to flip that around. Elliot, what's the future of math education? You don't want to ask me that question either. I have done a lot more math courses than this kid who's still learning about multiplication. I have confidence in what it means to be good at math. So I don't know what the future of math is because I already have learned it. And so we need to ask kids like this. And so the question is, why is it okay for us adults to design educational tools, but it's not okay for Elliot to design a makeup brush? I believe it comes into this concept of adultism, the bias and prejudice of children as a group. I've worked with a lot of clients, and I hear these types of statements a lot of the time, and they irk me at this point. As an adult, I wouldn't want to do this, but it is all right for children to do this. Even if a child doesn't want to do this, it's good for them. We put children in a different category. They're like kind of a lesser category. It's okay that they don't have the highest quality design. Just to give you an extreme example, the budget for one episode of Game of Thrones was $15 million. It's probably worth it, a very good episode. I get hired sometimes to write reading stories for kids in classrooms. I get paid $80. So that's how much we're willing to pay for a kid's experience in the classroom is $80. There's a giant proportional difference about what's going on here. Adultism happens because many educational products are never shown to students until they have already been designed. Without representation, we put our own biases into design. Now, I've kind of primed you here, but this is a fun activity. This is an interface that I was actually designed to analyze and figure out whether it was working or not. I want you to turn to each other. This is a math game where kids can learn about hundreds, tens, and ones. I want you to talk to each other about why might this not work for kids. I'll spoil it for you. The kids really struggled with this. In fact, many of them couldn't use it all. So turn with each other and talk about why do you think that might not work for them. All right, I'm gonna pull you guys all back in here. Does anyone want to share some ideas why they think this interface might not work? I have the advantage of interviewing about 100 kids about it, but what possible reasons do you think this might not work? Anyone want to take some guesses? Exactly, those numbers up there, like the 268 and the 121, how are those even related? And we have these numbers down here. Yep, you didn't even notice that there is actually an assignment up at the top to do 268. Any other ideas?
Yeah, I'm not really sure where to start or what is.
Yeah.
And the symbols below are also really accurate.
Yeah, that crazy 100. It kind of looks artistically nice, but would you even notice there's 100 in there? No? Yeah, well, this is what we're giving our kids. Like, okay, well, it was a cheaply designed interface, and you're not a consumer, it doesn't matter. So just to go through some of these crazy things that I see over and over again in these products. First off, there's a little help button in this corner. There's the idea, it's hard, but they can click the help button. Kids never click help buttons. They never will click it, they'll never ask for help, so it doesn't even matter that it's there. Someone already brought this up, but it's not clear that you need to make the number 268 or that there's an assignment around that or that these two are related to each other. There's a reset button. Think about this. As a small child who doesn't even fully understand hundreds, you're not going to be like, you know what, I put too many things in here and it's going to just go higher. I'm going to do a little reset and push this button and start over. That's an amazing amount of self-regulation for a second grader. It's not going to happen. But the designers thought it might. You can't see it on here, but a lot of companies also do these kind of reward mechanisms. Like, if you finish it, you're gonna get a sticker. And I'm like, maybe for preschoolers, but I don't see a second grader being like, I'm gonna go ask my mom for help because I really need to get this sticker right now. It just doesn't happen like that. But we have all of these assumptions about how a second grader is gonna use this interface. So many educational products are never shown to students until they are already designed. Or worse, products are only tested with employees' family. And I'm going to talk about this problem. So, family member demographics. If your kid testing a product that your family is working in one of these big ed tech companies, the parents love school so much that they went into education. The parents know those tricks to sharing the love of learning. They know how to hack school to make it work. They are way above average in school, and they are very white. So these are the type of kids that are getting tested in these companies. So what happens around that? Well, let's think about the demographics. 66% of fourth grader students are not proficient in reading. 82% of black fourth grade students are not proficient in reading. You're not testing these kids. These kids are not going to be designed for. You're going to be designing for this kid. And so what happens when we design for this kid instead of those other kids I was talking about? Well, your education product will expect students to be self-motivated, assume high levels of confidence, assume previously acquired competency, assume self-efficacy and resourcefulness, and only cover topics interesting to nerdy white kids. For the kids I work with, this is the reality that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Their iPad is their babysitter. They have been born with an iPad in their hand. They spend 8 or more hours of screen time a day. Marvel and Roblox set the bar for what is entertaining. So when we give them Dr. Dolittle, they're like, I can go home and watch Captain America. They have little exposure to books at home, and they have little to no expectation to do well in school. So this is how I address it. This is how I bring representative students into design. The first thing I ask my clients to do is to kind of remove, well, my child thinks. Your child is not representative of everyone we're trying to serve. The second thing I do is I go into children's homes. I go into a place where they have the power. I actually play with them. I go into their room. They give me an entire tour. We connect with the kids where they are the experts. But even more than that, I form partnerships with after-school clubs. I work with the Boys and Girls Clubs in Denver, where I get to meet a lot of kids. A lot of those kids don't even necessarily have a home to go back to right after school. But we don't just go to the Boys and Girls Club and do some research. We actually become part of that community. This is my car for Trunk or Treat, where we give out candy to the local families. I join local community groups, and I participate in these kids' lives. I'm not just a researcher, but I am actually part of the community. I don't think we can co-create if we're not part of the communities we serve. So I'm going to give you 3 challenges today. This is the first one. If any of you guys do this, please email me, because this is my goal, is to make it so more people do these type of things. Number 1, spend a day at a location that uses your product. Go out there and look at how they're using it. Now I'm going to put a caveat here. You can't just go there and take a picture of yourself in a school and say, hey, look, students are using my product. And really listen to the students. And that gets to number 2. Listen deeply to the students. All right, I'm going to turn it back to you guys here. If you ask a kindergartner, maybe a second grader, what do you think of my new product? What do you think they're going to respond? Go ahead and turn to each other and discuss, what do you think would happen if you asked a kindergartner, what do you think of this product? All right, I'm going to pull you guys back in. Anyone want to share some guesses?
Oh, it's okay.
It's okay? What did you say? Positive feedback. Okay, I didn't put this in the talk, but it's really funny. I am testing this reading program I've been developing for 10 years. Hey, what do you think of this product? And she's like, oh man, let me tell, wait a second, did you make this? I was like, oh no, I didn't make it. She's like, good, because it's really bad. Oh, yeah. As soon as they know enough manners to tell you it's good. It avoids judgment, it avoids the hard conflict. Or, to what other people says, it's okay. For the struggling readers I work with, so I'm working with kids who are 2 grade levels below reading. They actually struggle with articulation. A lot of them say, I don't know. Or like even worse, they just shrug their shoulders. It's like, okay, this is not information here. There is no data coming out of this interview whatsoever. So what we do, I was hired to figure out how to make it so that struggling readers would actually want to engage more with reading. And so we would build out these prototypes. We start with paper and make them digital. And none of the kids liked them at all. They would just not read any of them. I didn't have to ask them if they liked it or not. They just would skip over all the reading. They wouldn't do any of the reading. And we'd run into this problem over and over again. But then I put eye tracking glasses on the kids. And this is the interface that we had kind of this big aha moment. They would skip over all that reading. You guys are probably skipping over it too. And they didn't do any reading, but then this question over here, the eye tracking glasses showed the kids would read that question 3 times over, and then they'd look over all the answers, and then they'd answer. And then I'd ask them about that afterwards. They want to prove to me that they're good at reading, that they deserve to be in the school. Like, look how smart I am. And for them, answering this question right is way more important than the reading. We actually saw the same thing with our emotional sensors. When they're reading, we just see kind of that dip. But when they're answering questions, they're alive, they're interacting, they're excited. So they never told us. They said, you know what? It would be more salient if you had better questions in here that would engage me so I could be more participatory in my learning. They didn't say that, but we were able to look at this through the observations. And we actually built a product off of this finding. It took a lot longer to build it. But what we found when we made books that were question-centered is that students read up to 4 grade levels higher and voluntarily read 5 times longer. And all we had to do was just watch what they wanted to do. We didn't have to do much. To give another example, I get like the hardest questions I get hired to ask. This one was, can we get middle school kids to pay more attention and be more engaged on math tests? So I had to bring this giant pizza in and be like, all right guys, pizza if you take my math test. And then I put eye tracking glasses on kids while they took math tests. And I saw a really scary trend. Is what would happen is that these kids would come in and they're like, I'm going to show you I'm so good at math, and they start answering questions, and then they run into a really hard math question, and they wouldn't know what the answer is. And then they start feeling defeated, and then they start saying, you know what, this math test's not for me. This is not who I am, and you're just trying to show me that I don't belong here. So after that hard question where they give up, then they just start rapidly responding, just filling in all the bubbles and not even trying. So that math test isn't even representative of what they know and what they don't know. This made me ask this question, are students failing math tests or are math tests failing students? We asked the students, what do you need? What do we need for you to feel like I believe in you, that you can have the confidence to fill this out? What they told us is they don't want any of these kind of like cute robots talking to them. They don't want a teacher talking to them because they believe the teacher's not on their side. They want their peers talking to them. In fact, specifically, they want a peer, these are middle schoolers, they want a high schooler talking to them. A high schooler that looks like them, and they want that high schooler to say, you know what, no one believed in me either, and I proved them wrong. That's the statement they wanted to hear. So that's what we put in the front of this test, and it really helped the kids feel confident. We had to listen to them and see where they were at. We didn't get to design it on our own. So how I listen deeply to students. So when I do my reading test, I do never tell a student they have to read. Okay, I told you guys there's going to be 2 questions. All right, turn to each other. Can you find the book in this one? So Lego was really interested in how do we motivate readers through play? Can we have toys get readers more engaged with reading? So I gave Emilio a bucket full of dinosaurs and a book about dinosaurs, and if you can figure it out, that book is buried under the dinosaurs. And you know, if I went there and I said, Emilio, you have to read this book right now, he might have read it, but that's not the reality. I'm not in the room with the product. He's not going to read this book. Instead of asking, do you like this, as you guys called out, that's not going to work. You ask the question, can you tell me what happened? You have them tell their story. You hear their story. You don't just put a binary yes or no in their words. Rely on observations instead of self-report. You kind of probably heard that theme. Don't ask the kids to tell you what happens, just have them show you what happens. That's what we did with these questions. We saw how they were reading. I love it. You're going to see some pictures at the end. I just love these pictures because I don't think people understand. You can make great reading experiences and math experiences if you design them correctly. I don't have to ask him what he thinks of this reading product. In fact, when I asked him afterwards anyways, he's like, yeah, it was good. But it's like, no, that moment right there, you know you did something correct. You can see it in their behavior and their body language, what's going on. So my second challenge to all of you is record a child using your product with no adult watching. Remove yourself from the loop. You're putting way too much bias in space. Go out there and watch what happens when a kid uses your product without you telling them exactly how to use it. And my third one is fail 10 times more often. I told you about Emilio not wanting to read and play. We didn't stop there. That was our first one. I made 32 different books. And I just kept showing them to the kids and trying to figure out how am I going to get you to read and play simultaneously. We started with a lot of text, skipped right over it. We made less text, kind of comedy, skipped right over it. Hey, look, you could read and modify your Lego while you're reading, skipped right over it. But then we found one that worked. We had to try it over again. Kids really like to storytell with their toys, and they wanted to be empowered to storytell. So this one actually showed you how to storytell with your toys. And then we made it even better. We actually told them, let me tell you about that toy character. What are their motivations? What are their challenges? Kind of story prompts, and the kids loved it. And this actually turned into an actual product. So challenge number 3, I encourage you guys all to test a product that you only spent 30 minutes creating. 30 minutes, because that's going to be an easy way to iterate. You made it in 30 minutes, you tested it out, it didn't work, and let's try again, and keep going over and over again. So, in conclusion, please, when you're trying to design for students, design with representative students, listen deeply to students, and fail 10 times more often. I told you about our 3rd grade English language learner. He's falling asleep trying to read Dr. Dolittle. That same day, I gave him those question stories. This is his emotional response. It's a subtle difference, so I want you to look carefully at this graph, and then I'm going to show you what it looked like when he was reading the question books. And in case you missed it, that's reading Dr. Dolittle, and that's reading Wonder Stories. Those are moments of emotional, cognitive engagement, and all we had to do was listen to them and design for what they needed, and you can make really good educational products. And now I'm going to just show you some cases of them using this tool. This reminds me of what we're doing this for. This is what I want all learning to feel like. Children in today's classrooms already know what the future of education should look like. We just need to listen. All right, that's it. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. No, it means a lot. I think this is really important. The fact that you came here, there's a lot of good talk. It means a lot that you guys came by. That's my email address. Any questions you have, I'll just tell you what I've learned. Just email me on that. That's my webpage. I have a lot of talks and think research. And then those books, those question books, we have 100 of them. They're completely free, and you can give them. Please share them with anyone who you might be. Did I just unmute it? I want to open up to questions. We got like 5 minutes. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, there's so many graphs. There's way too many graphs. Yeah, like it might have been what got me into all this work. Any other questions? So I was testing with kindergartners on that one and 1st graders. Well, you guys know what that might have been 2nd graders. So the type of feedback you get is frustration. The kids don't actually realize that the tool's broken. They think they're bad at math. They're like, oh, this is too hard for me. I'm like, it's not too hard for you, friend. The adults in the room can't do this either. So they can't give you feedback that says I'm not going to click the help button, but you can see them getting frustrated, and you can see the entire product collapse. And so that's the type of feedback we started. And we changed it. Like, that doesn't exist as much anymore for them. I just knock on a school door and be like, hey, I got my camera and sensors. You guys mind if I stop by? It's cool. You know, the worst part is that emotion that I'm measuring is technically called arousal. It really doesn't work well in the permission slips. But yeah, so how to form these relationships is a lot of work. It took me a year of emailing all the actual school clubs before I found a relationship where the Boys and Girls Club really cares about these kids learning to read, and they understand they're not being represented in school. So you have to find people who care. If you're a company, people are using your product. There are ways to connect with them. It's not as easy as knocking on a door. It is a relationship building exercise. It's a networking exercise. It is hard work. I work with these billion-dollar companies, they don't do it. So it's like, you can do it, but you have to try hard. And come talk to me. I'll tell you about how I figured out how to do it myself. Any other questions? So the question is, when you work with a kindergartner and you work with a sixth grader, is there any differences between them? I try to draw the line of 3-year-olds. Man, 3-year-olds, you're like, oh boy, they really like to put it in their mouth on that one. I don't know what that means. So it is really different. It's kind of fun. Kids are just really bad at lying, but adults also lie. They're just good at lying. So you kind of can see, like at the different developmental stages, how good they're getting at lying. You have to be really careful at the younger ages about a sense of security and safety. So like, sometimes I like to do research with the parents in the room, even though the parents cause a lot of the problems. You have to have a relationship way more with the fourth grader. You could ask a high schooler what they think, they'll tell you. That's why I like to work with the elementary school kids. So the emotions are really overwhelming for the younger kids. And then the middle school kids are actually better at articulating. So you can actually start asking harder questions for middle school kids. Oh God, the middle school self-confidence, boom, just on the bottom. And so like, you have to make them feel like you believe in them. Like a preschooler, they're like, everyone believes in me, I'm amazing. But that middle schooler, they're like, dude, I don't want to talk to you about how much I suck. And I'm like, I think you're awesome. And then they think, you're just saying that because you think I suck. It's like there's a whole different kind of way. So you have to meet people about where they need, what are you providing to them in this relationship? Any other questions?
I know the idea is that students are reading as clearly the modality, but is your research suggesting that books are not out, but out?
And this is the death of reading. That was actually my talk during COVID that never got to get talked about. The future of reading is digital. So the question is, are physical books on the way out? If it's up to kids, they would already be out. Kids have no desire to read a physical book right now. I think there's a lot of benefits for a physical book. I mean, I work with physical publishers. But at the end of the day, why they're going to die, and they will die. I already see it. I'm trying to encourage people to kill them, but it takes a long time. But the reason why is a book is passive. There's just no interaction, there's no feedback, there's just no moments to emotionally engage a kid, which was perfectly fine when we grew up because we didn't have much stimuli. You are competing with Roblox. Roblox has a lot of stimuli. This is how the kid's brain is working. This is what they're expecting, and a book is not delivering it there. So that's from the emotional perspective. Digital books actually provide a lot of great comprehension work on phonics. They do so many things, but we're just slowly getting there. We're trying to get beyond PDFs.
For me, what you were just saying is disadvantage is also an advantage when you work and you know the actually it's up to you.
Mm-hmm.
Fantasize more and go about this.
Yeah. That's a really good point. It's something I care a lot about too. So what he was just saying is that when you don't have all these bells and whistles, when you don't have all these distractions, you're able to immerse yourself in a book. You're able to live that fantasy. I often tell people, I'm making the training wheels to get them to Harry Potter. Because once you're in Harry Potter land, you are rocking. I hear that a lot. In fact, it's actually the number one thing I hear when I talk about digital reading. Which, this is not a talk on digital reading. Please take these things even if you don't believe in digital reading. I would argue that's a form of adultism. Because we have the privilege of being able to read. We do not spend 5 minutes trying to decipher a sentence where we have to work hard and we don't identify as readers. So when we can read, we have a magical experience with books. The kids I'm working with, half the words they don't recognize and they don't want to let anyone know that they can't read it, right? It's a completely different world. I think once my kids can read Harry Potter, I want them reading Harry Potter. I don't want them playing video games. My kids will never read Harry Potter. It's the problem. Any other questions? Anyone else want me to go into some deep philosophical questions about reading or something? Awesome. Well, I think we're actually out of time. So please stop by. I'd love to hear what you guys are all up to and how I can help in any way. Thank you so much. Bye.